host Biff. How are you doing today, Biff?
Wonderful.
Well, today's match is sure to be an exciting one. The King of Spring, Springman, is taking on the Ramen Bomber, Min Min. We're only minutes away from this historic arms clash, and fans are going absolutely wild.
Yeah! Woo!
The Switch has been a moderate success for Nintendo. While they spent 5 years just trying to explain this marketing disaster, people were sold on the Switch since day one. And it's now day 1634, and people are still sold on anything thrown their way. Games just don't stop selling on this system, and that keeps these games in the public consciousness for a really long time. It could just be me spending way too much time on Twitter, but I'm always seeing people post about games like Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8, and Xenoblade 2, even all these years later. Which makes it all the stranger that ARMS, another Nintendo title that released the same year, seemed to almost disappear from discussion mere months after launch. Now, not every Switch release is going to be as impactful as your Marios and Zeldas, especially when we're talking about a new IP, but given the marketing push and its launch window release, it seems Nintendo did pretty much everything in their power to make ARMS the next big thing, but it just never took off. A few years later, it seems they even tried to revive it with a free trial coinciding with the announcement of a Smash Fighter, but once again, the hype quickly fizzled out. I can even account for this perspective firsthand, as I bought ARMS at launch, and in a week's time, the title went back on the shelf and never really came back into play. So here we are 4 years later, and I think it's about time we find out how a game with such reach fell so short. So, for the people that weren't living under a rock, what is ARMS? ARMS is a motion control centric fighting game. Players are dropped into 3D arenas equipped with only their 2 long stretchy arms and whatever weapon they select for each hand. To launch your arms, you'll swing your arm forward and tilt your hand to curve your punches. Tilting the Joy-Con is how you move your character, while jumping and dashing are done with R and L respectively. Blocking is done by tilting your hands inward, and finally, grabs are performed by sending both your arms out simultaneously. Essentially, you're in a constant fight where you can reach your opponent from anywhere in the ring, and vice versa. All the while, you look like a shadow boxing idiot in your living room. There are more traditional control options available, which, don't get me wrong, having options is great, but if that's what you're looking for, why are you playing ARMS? So, with that monotonous intro out of the way, let's get right into the action. The clear place to start here is the Grand Prix. You select a fighter of your choice to partake in 10 battles to become the champion of the ARMS League. Selecting your difficulty here will also be important, as it will result in completely different finales, because yes, there's actually a story here. For most battles, you'll confront a different member of the ARMS League on their home turf, in a best of 3 matchup. Each ARMS fighter has their own default selection of arms to choose from, so you'll have to keep those options in mind when facing each opponent. Additionally, characters have their own special gimmicks and abilities that you'll need to learn to counter, like Min Min's Dragon Arm, Twintel's Time Manipulation, Bite and Bark's Duo Dynamic, and Helix's very existence. Even the stages themselves will substantially change how you approach each battle. You'll be hopping off limos, riding spinning tops, throwing characters through glass containers, hiding behind vials of unidentified fluids, breaking ancient Aztec pillars. This is insane! Does the ARMS League have any sort of rules or regulations?
We do have one.
Which is?
Oh, please don't sue us.
And if the motion controls weren't scaring the fighting game community enough, your matches will also be bombarded with items. Bombs will drop from the sky, exploding in either a ball of fire or electricity. Bottles will drop to refill your health or rush gauge. When your rush gauge is full, it acts as your standard fighting game finisher. You release a flurry of punches for substantial damage, that is if they don't block it. It's the same gist for each character, but the arms you have equipped will affect the speed and damage of the attack. Regardless, you'll look like this. This gauge will always be filling up with each punch thrown, so it's important to keep track of yours and your opponent's. It will also carry over round to round, so it often becomes a question of if it's best to use it immediately to finish off your current round, or save it for an advantage in the next. So now that I've finally begun strategizing with these mechanics, let's throw everything we just learned out the window for some minigames. Each Grand Prix will break up the standard battles with a couple of minigames mixed in. First is Skill Shot, where you and your opponents will compete to break targets while simultaneously landing hits on one another. To score high, you'll need to smash as many of the targets as you can in one swing, and finish with a final blow to your opponent. Simply hitting more targets won't be enough if you don't combo them correctly. So there's definitely an effort by the game designers to make you strategize a little, but I ultimately found that the best strategy was to just throw punches into the biggest clump of targets and pray I hit my opponent. Some matches I'd play horribly and still pull out a win. In other matches I'd play really well and somehow still lose. It's kind of a chaotic mess, but in a good way. Next up is V-Ball. You and your opponent will volley this gigantic ball back and forth until it touches the ground or just decides to explode. Why? While Skill Shot was a chaotic mess, at least the objective functioned well within ARM's mechanics. V-Ball just has both sides punching the same object frantically, in hopes that the physics engine will throw them a bone. The camera just moves your character so you're always facing the ball, so your role as the player just becomes swing forward, swing forward, swing forward. And if both players are equally good at swing forward, the game just gets impatient and will just decide a winner basically at random. It's ARM's gameplay at its most bare bones, and that says a lot. Finally, we have Hoops. This minigame might have to be my favorite, just from the scenario alone. Your goal is to grab your opponent and either dunk or chuck them into the hoop. Unlike the other minigames, Hoops keeps both players in a fully open 3D arena, maintaining all the mechanics from regular battles. So while the gameplay can definitely devolve into simply throwing out grab attacks, there's a lot more room to strategize how you get your opponent into your arms. With all that out of the way, we finally made it to the title bout. Any predictions for this match, Biff?
Blood will rain from the skies, and those that have sinned will know nothing but the eternal flame, with no hope of retribution.
My money is on Max Brass. As I mentioned earlier, this finale can end in a few different ways depending on your difficulty level. On easier difficulties, you'll fight Max Brass, the champion of the ARMS League. On intermediate difficulties, your victory will be cut short and you'll have to battle the mechanical monstrosity, Headlock. Headlock will possess Max Brass, turning this into a 6-on-2 ARMS battle. This will be your ultimate test of dodging and blocking, as taking 6 hits will quickly deplete your health bar. Finally, at the hardest difficulties, your match will be interrupted by Dr. Coyle of the ARMS lab, who will then, albeit more willingly, combine with Headlock to make the battle utterly unfair. Where are the referees? Reaching these alternative endings is no easy task, because the computers in this game are surprisingly tough. Anything above level 3 has a decent chance of completely flooring you, especially on the higher end. Most Nintendo games I say bring it on, but here, if you're a beginner, your choices are to swallow your pride, or get your ass kicked, and then swallow your pride. No matter how you play through the Grand Prix though, your results will be the same, with you reigning as the new champion. Outside of the Grand Prix, we have a few different modes and options. Team battles will tether you and your teammate together in a 2v2 battle. If you throw one of your opponents, their teammate will fly off with them. Arms are just flying everywhere, and players are being thrown left and right. It's a lot of fun, if you can convince other people to play arms with you. Next, we have Headlock Scramble, where a headlock mask will be dropped into the arena. If the container is broken, a player can nab it and triple their arm count. This will make you much more powerful, but could also make you a target in matches of more than 2 players. Glad they actually gave players the chance to pilot Headlock. Having 6 arms was always a dream of mine. 1 on 100. This is basically the 100-man Smash mode from the Smash series. You'll have to take down 100 faceless enemies in one go, with occasional health drops along the way. I almost beat this mode until they dropped Headlock as enemy 100. Come on, that's just not fair! Finally, we have the arms test, where the game will give you a random selection of arms for each match, and you'll try to rack up as high of a winning streak as possible. It's a really good mode if you're trying to figure out which arms work best for you. Now that I've put some time into the game, It's time I go online and fight some real players.
I will savor each moment as your ego crumbles before my very eyes.
Now, it's very much like Nintendo to make the online absolute garbage. But it's even more like Nintendo to make ARMS the only first-party title with good online. Seriously, why is this so good? There are two main modes here, Party Match and Ranked Match. Party Match puts you in a lobby with other players, and quickly and swiftly sets up various battle types and mini-games. In between games, you can change your character and arms, a feature that Smash is disgustingly missing. There's even a warm-up option that I could barely use because the matchmaking was just so quick and efficient. Nintendo's online really peaked back in 2017, which is especially ironic considering that was before we paid for it. Ranked Match is your typical matchmaking mode that you can have on in the background. You'll be matched with someone of a similar skill level to fight to prove, I am not level 1. I'm level 2. This is the best place to test your real ARMS skills. It really shows just how high the ARMS skill ceiling can go. Of course, the option to play online with friends is also here. Still no? Offline, we can play local battles. And the mandatory training mode. Lastly, we have a slew of options and collectibles. You can view your personal stats, replays, and even a dashboard that includes regional and worldwide rankings. And even tournament clips. That's so cool! Once again, why does ARMS have all these really cool features and not Smash or Mario Kart? Games that are just a little more popular. For collectibles, we have badges which act as achievements, concept art which you can purchase, and arms you can unlock via a paid Skillshot-esque minigame. The concept art here is really cool, and does a great job of expanding the world, characters, and lore of ARMS. As for the collectible arms, this is really tedious. Each character has their 3 default arms, and each additional arms type needs to be unlocked for each and every character individually. So if you're itching for a specific arms combination for a certain character, you just have to hope you unlock it before you're broke. And yes, you can get repeats of the same arms.
Suffer!
These are considered ARMS Plus, and are slightly more powerful than their regular counterparts. I checked if you could bring these buffed arms online, and yes you can, so that's a bit unfair. There is one potential workaround for this issue, however. By using a special input on the main menu, we enter tournament mode. Here we're limited to versus, friends, and local battles, but now with all the arms unlocked. This mode is the developer's way of supporting the competitive scene, so players don't need to worry about setups missing arms types. How do these games have the same publisher? And that is everything ARMS has to offer. I had a lot of fun with this game, like with the battles and minigames in Grand Prix, the battles and minigames in Versus, the battles and minigames in online play, the battles and minigames with my friends. At the end of the day, ARMS' critical flaw comes down to the lack of content and variety. The core gameplay of ARMS is a lot of fun, but once you've gotten a hang of the game's main mechanics, there isn't much that's going to keep the experience fresh for very long. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be swinging your arms all the same, and after a while, it gets tiring. Literally, I'm really out of shape. If you play through the Grand Prix once, you've already seen a majority of the game's content, and that's a really bad sign in my book. This problem was made even worse by the game's post-launch update system, which left the roster at only 10 characters, less stages, less arms, and even less modes at launch. I appreciate everything they tried to do with this title, but ARMS just feels like one simple concept that got stretched too thin. If ARMS was pushed as a budget title, maybe I'd be singing a different tune, but for a game that was sold for $60, there just isn't enough here. Which sucks, because you can tell just how much the developers cared about this title, and tried to make ARMS something truly special. And you know what? In some aspects, they absolutely succeeded. The characters of ARMS are so well designed and have such distinct personalities, despite how little dialogue the game has. The amazing art gallery only further showcases what a finely crafted world they were able to create within the confines of a fighting game. And then there's the fantastic soundtrack. It's mostly just different arrangements of the same track, but they all have their own distinct styles to complement their settings and characters. ARM's presentation is what steals the show at the end of the day. It's just let down by a gameplay style that can't reach the same longevity. ARMS is an enjoyable time. Before I went all negative there, I think I made that clear. It's a game that stays very true to its simple core gameplay loop, and sees just how far they can take those limited mechanics. This led to a lot of people getting tired of the game really quickly, but on the flip side, you have players who stuck with the title, making the most out of every mechanic and trick they could find, finding depth in something most found shallow. While not the success Nintendo probably hoped for, nor a greatest hit among consumers, I still believe ARMS deserves its place among the rest of Nintendo's catalog. But don't take my word for it. Let's check in with Dustin, who's live on the scene with the general public.
Thanks, Reese. Sir, what's your opinion on ARMS?
What the f is ARMS?